This is where everything converges. Every moment you doubted yourself, every breath you wasted trying to be understood, every argument that spiraled into chaos, every silent wound you carried like a secret. All of it leads here, to the moment the story ends, not with a scream, but with a choice. And not their choice, yours. Because what they never understood, what manipulators never understand, is that power doesn't collapse in noise. It collapses in clarity. And clarity, once awakened, can never fall asleep again. Number 1. The moment you realize you're not who you were. Think back to the version of you who tolerated confusion because you mistook it for depth, who accepted inconsistency because you confused it with complexity, who sacrificed your peace, hoping it would create understanding. That version of you was emotional, open, and willing, all qualities manipulators prey on and disguise as weaknesses. But here's the truth they never expected you to discover. Your softness wasn't the problem. It was their weaponization of it. Your loyalty wasn't foolish. It was given to the wrong hands. Your silence now isn't emptiness. It's restoration. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop negotiating your worth. And that changes everything. Number 2. They didn't lose you. They lost the version they could control. When you went silent, they didn't grieve you. They grieved their access, their power, their script, their emotional leverage, their psychological advantage. They lost the version of you who responded instantly, who absorbed their moods, who forgave too easily, who rationalized their behavior, who tried to fix what they kept breaking. But that version of you isn't coming back, because your silence didn't just create distance, it created transformation. And transformation is irreversible. Number 3. The power of walking away without noise. There's a unique kind of strength in the person who leaves quietly. No grand exits, no dramatic speeches, no accusations, no emotional fireworks. Just a calm withdrawal that says more than any argument ever could. I've seen enough. When someone tries to manipulate you, they expect resistance. They expect tears, tension, emotional bargaining. They expect the familiar loop. What they don't expect, what they have no defense for, is the kind of silence that feels like a final verdict. A silence that doesn't punish, doesn't provoke, doesn't plead. It simply ends things without needing to prove anything. Because the moment you realize someone cannot meet you at your depth, there is nothing left to fix, only something left to leave. Number 4. You become the mirror they cannot escape. Your silence forces them into self-reflection for the first time in your entire connection. Not because you're teaching them a lesson, but because their usual tactics malfunction in the absence of your reaction. They replay conversations. They rethink decisions. They revisit every moment where they thought they had the upper hand. And for the first time, they feel the weight of their own behavior. The same weight you carried alone for so long. This is the irony of manipulation. The moment you detach, they finally see the truth. But by then, they're the only one who feels it. You're not seeking closure from them. You're giving closure to yourself. Number 5. You don't want revenge. You want peace. Here's something they'll never understand. You didn't go silent to hurt them. You went silent to heal yourself. You didn't step back out of spite. You stepped back out of sanity. Because some people don't deserve a front row seat to your heart. Some people don't deserve continued access to your empathy, your attention, your patience, your emotional capacity. Some people only understand your value when they no longer have it. And even then, their realization is irrelevant because your healing is no longer tied to their remorse. You're not seeking closure from them. You're giving closure to yourself. Number 6. The end is not dramatic. It's clean. The story doesn't end with fire. It ends with distance, with clarity, with a new emotional architecture built on self-respect. You don't check their messages anymore. You don't decode their tone. You don't replay arguments. You don't crave apologies. You don't analyze inconsistencies. You don't negotiate boundaries. You simply walk out of the emotional maze they built to keep you dizzy. And once you're out, you finally see how small that maze actually was. You see how much of your strength you underestimated, how much of your intuition you silenced, how much of your dignity you compromised. Not anymore. Because once you reclaim yourself, no manipulator can claim you again. The final truth, and the power you take with you. This is the truth people rarely speak. Your silence was never the punishment. It was the graduation. The moment you stopped reacting, you stepped into a version of yourself they were never prepared to meet. Calmer, sharper, colder, clearer, untouchable. You didn't win by overpowering them. You won by outgrowing them. And they never saw it coming because they never believed you had the strength to walk away without looking back. But you did. And that's the silent power move that changes everything. The final line. Your new identity. You're not the person they manipulated. You're not the version they controlled. You're not the soul they underestimated. You are the one who woke up, the one who stepped away, the one who chose peace over chaos, the one who replaced reaction with reflection, the one who ended the cycle without saying a single word. And that's the cruel beauty of power. It doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't compete. It simply walks away and never returns. The story ends here, not with noise, with knowing. Because control isn't taken by force. It's taken by silence.
When emotion fights reason and pain becomes a battlefield. There's a moment, a quiet one, when your mind becomes a war zone. One side holds your logic, your awareness, your new understanding of the world. The other side holds the echoes of your past, the wounds that shaped you, the voices that still whisper in the dark. And this is where the real conflict begins. Your trauma wants to protect you, but your emotions still want to believe in people. You feel it, don't you? That pull between what you know and what you still hope for. A silent tug-of-war that forces you to question every instinct you've built. Because even when you understand the psychology of manipulation, even when you recognize the tactics, even when you see the patterns as clearly as daylight, a part of you still wants to believe that maybe, this time, it's different. This is the cruel paradox of human nature. Your heart always lags behind your mind. You can dissect intentions with surgical precision, but the emotional residue of old wounds still burns. You can tell when someone's using guilt as a weapon, but a faint part of you still reacts to it. You can recognize red flags before they even appear, but your chest still tightens when someone raises their voice. This is the battlefield of trauma, not in what hurt you, but in how deeply it rewired your responses. And here's the part people rarely admit. You didn't just survive trauma, you internalized it. You absorbed the chaos. You memorized every warning signal. You built reflexes out of fear, hypervigilance, and emotional residue. That's why conflict doesn't come from outside anymore. It comes from within. One side says, be cautious. The other says, be open. One side says, people are dangerous. The other says, but I don't want to be alone. One side says, detach. The other says, maybe there's still something worth holding on to. And the truth is brutal. You cannot outrun the parts of yourself you haven't met yet. The pain you ignore becomes the pain that controls you. The patterns you refuse to face become the patterns you repeat. The trauma you avoid becomes the compass you follow blindly. This is why your transformation demands conflict. Your old self must die for your new self to live. The version of you who tolerated disrespect, that part has to collapse. The version of you who apologized for existing, that part must be buried. The version of you who believed love required suffering, that part must be dismantled completely. You're not just fighting the world anymore. You're fighting the version of yourself that the world created. And here's the darkest truth of all. You learn to survive dysfunction so well that healthy situations now feel suspicious. When someone is kind, you question the angle. When someone is consistent, you wait for the switch. When someone is emotionally safe, you scan for hidden traps, not because you're broken, but because your nervous system memorized danger as home. Trauma conditions you. It programs you. It wires you to expect pain, even in the absence of it. Most people misunderstand this. They think trauma makes you fragile. No, trauma makes you alert. Trauma makes you analytical. Trauma makes you over-aware. You don't walk into rooms anymore. You evaluate them. You don't trust words. You dissect them. You don't give second chances. You calculate risks. This is the emotional conflict the world can't see from the outside, the constant negotiation between your old wounds and your new wisdom. And that battle shapes you into something most people will never understand. Someone who feels deeply, but moves strategically. Because here's the secret. Pain gives you two options: to drown in it, or to weaponize it. Most people drown. They cling to their suffering, repeating the same emotional loops, chasing the same validation, reenacting the same childhood wounds. But you're starting to do something different. You're beginning to recognize that pain isn't just a feeling. It's a tool. When used correctly, it creates a mindset sharpened by reality, not softened by fantasy. It teaches you who to trust. It teaches you how to listen. It teaches you how to navigate conflict without collapsing. Pain becomes your internal compass, not the kind that directs you to comfort, but the kind that directs you to truth. And truth is rarely comfortable. That's why most people avoid it. They pretend, they numb, they distract themselves with relationships, addictions, routines, and illusions. But the ones who face pain openly, they rise differently. They see differently. They move differently. Your trauma became the teacher you never asked for, but the one you needed. And now you see what others can't. People don't change because they see the light. They change because they feel the heat. And you felt enough heat to burn through every illusion. This is where Machiavellian self-mastery begins. The quiet understanding that logic must rule over emotion if you want to stop repeating the past. You are no longer the person who reacts. You are the person who chooses. No more guilt-driven decisions. No more trauma-based loyalty. No more emotional blackmail disguised as love. Because when you understand this conflict, when you see how your trauma fights your growth, everything changes. Your healing becomes strategic, not sentimental. Your boundaries become non-negotiable, not performative. Your energy becomes rare, not easily accessed. And the people who once controlled you using emotion, they start losing their power. The moment you understand your internal conflict, the world loses its leverage over you. That's when the mask finally falls. Not theirs. Yours. How pain rewires you, exposes motives, and turns you into a strategist. There's a moment in every person's life when pain stops being emotional and becomes analytical. When your heart stops asking, "Why did they do this to me?" And your mind starts asking, "What did this reveal about them and about me?" This is the shift most people never experience because most people never stop hurting long enough to start understanding. But you crossed that line the moment you realized something chilling. Your trauma wasn't random. It followed a pattern, a psychological blueprint, a behavioral sequence, a predictable structure of human motives and emotional triggers. And once you begin tracing those patterns, your entire worldview cracks open. Let's dissect it. 1. Trauma teaches you the psychology of masks. People wear masks for 3 reasons. 1. To hide their weakness. 2. To hide their intentions. 3. To hide their nature. Trauma exposes all 3. Think about the people who hurt you. They didn't wound you because you were weak. They wounded you because they assumed you wouldn't notice. Because when someone sees you as soft, they assume your eyes are closed. When someone sees you as forgiving, they assume your memory is short. When someone sees you as loyal, they assume you're blind. Your trauma shattered those assumptions. You started noticing small things, the pauses between their words, the slight shift in tone, the way their eyes move when they lie. You learned to read micro-expressions, even if you didn't realize it. You learned to detect emotional inconsistencies. You learned the sound of manipulation before the sentence fully formed. This isn't paranoia. This is pattern recognition. Trauma trains your instincts to operate like a radar, and once you see through masks, you can never unsee them. 2. Pain exposes the economy of emotion. People trade, not money, emotion, affection for control, validation for obedience, attention for access, silence for dominance. Most people don't realize they're caught in these psychological exchanges. But your trauma forced you to become fluent in emotional economics. You learned which people only show kindness when they need something. You learned which people apologize just enough to reset the cycle. You learned which people demand loyalty they would never return. Your pain became your spreadsheet. Your memories became case studies. You no longer get attached to words. You track patterns of consistency. You no longer get manipulated by guilt. You trace the motive behind it. You no longer get flattered by praise. You watch when the praise appears and what it's meant to distract you from. This is what psychological clarity looks like. Not coldness, not bitterness, just accuracy. 3. Trauma teaches you the mechanics of fear. Fear is not random. It has triggers, it has roots, it has a timeline. And once you decode your fear, you can control it. Most people run from the emotions that break them. Shame, abandonment, rejection, criticism. But you didn't run. You stared into them long enough to see their shape. You learned something powerful. Fear isn't a stop sign. It's a compass. Whatever you fear most usually reveals what mattered to you the most, what was used against you, what you must build immunity to. If you feared being ignored, it's because someone used silence to punish you. If you feared being abandoned, it's because someone conditioned you to cling. If you feared disappointing others, it's because someone made your worth conditional. Your trauma revealed the architecture of your fear, and now you're dismantling it, piece by piece. This is how warriors are made, not through confidence, but through understanding. Confidence is an outcome. Clarity is the weapon. 4. Pain enhances your emotional intelligence, but not the soft kind. Most people hear emotional intelligence and think compassion, patience, communication, empathy. But trauma gives you a different form of emotional intelligence, the dark kind. The kind that allows you to see hypocrisy instantly, predict betrayal before it happens, sense shifts in loyalty, recognize emotional manipulation by tone alone, identify when someone's apology is strategic, detect when kindness is actually control. This isn't intuition, this is data. Collected over years, stored in your nervous system, activated whenever someone tries to pull the same trick twice. Your trauma taught you to read people with forensic accuracy. You became the quiet observer in every room, the person who smiles but notices everything, the one who listens more than you speak, the one who takes mental notes while others expose themselves through their behavior. Pain taught you to analyze energy, not words, intentions, not actions, patterns, not promises. 5. Trauma creates a double conscience, and that's where power begins. Every person who has suffered deeply gains a second mind. One mind feels, one mind analyzes, one absorbs pain, one extracts lessons, one reacts, one evaluates. This double conscience is your hidden advantage. Here's why. Most people only live from one mind. They either feel too much or think too much. But you operate through both. You know what someone's trying to make you feel while simultaneously understanding why they're doing it. You see the emotional layer and the psychological layer at the same time. This dual awareness is what separates victims from strategists. You no longer fall for guilt trips because you recognize the leverage behind them. You no longer fall for emotional chaos because you decode the motive beneath it. You no longer fall for manipulation because you see the pattern forming before it even begins. That's not manipulation. That's survival. 6. This is why pain becomes power. Your trauma didn't give you superpower. It gave you perspective. Perspective sharp enough to become armor. Clarity sharp enough to become a blade. Awareness deep enough to become immunity. Pain made you see the world without filters. It forced you to understand human nature at its rawest, darkest, most unedited level. And once you understand human nature, nothing can blindside you again. People stop becoming mysteries. They become algorithms. Behavior stops confusing you. It becomes predictable. Manipulation stops controlling you. It becomes obvious. Your trauma didn't just teach you how to survive. It taught you how to move with intelligence. Cold intelligence, calm intelligence, strategic intelligence, the kind that scares people because they can't lie to you anymore. And when people can't lie to you, they can't control you. That's when the power shifts. There comes a moment in every journey through darkness when you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and you begin whispering something far more dangerous. What did this pain create inside me? Because pain always creates something. It either builds a cage or it forges a weapon. And everything changes the moment you realize you were never meant to stay wounded. You were meant to evolve. Not in the soft, poetic way people romanticize, but in the sharp, calculated, strategic way that only the broken ever understand. This is where the reversal begins, not in your heart, but in your perception. Because the moment you stop seeing yourself as the victim of your past and start seeing yourself as the architect of your future, every piece of your story rearranges itself. The betrayal no longer feels like a loss. It feels like evidence, a blueprint of how people operate when they assume you won't fight back. The abandonment no longer feels like emptiness. It feels like liberation. The removal of those who were never meant to stand beside the person you're becoming. The manipulation no longer feels like defeat. It becomes data, the kind of data only survivors can interpret. And suddenly, the same wounds that once made you collapse now make you incredibly precise. This is the awakening phase, the point in your evolution where pain stops dragging you backward and begins pushing you forward. Let's walk through it. 1. Awakening begins when you stop taking everything personally. Pain used to feel like proof that you weren't enough. Now you realize it was never about you. It was about their insecurity, their fear, their hunger for control. Hurt people don't just hurt people. They select the ones who won't fight back. But here's what they didn't expect. You were paying attention while they were playing games. You were learning while they were lying. You were observing while they assumed you were oblivious. You were becoming self-aware while they were still performing. The awakening begins the moment you see their behavior through the eyes of a strategist instead of a survivor. You stop saying, "I should have been better," and start saying, "They showed me who they were." You stop mourning what you lost and start analyzing what you gained. Insight, calibration, clarity. They didn't break you. They revealed the map. 2. Awakening sharpens. You in ways comfort never could comfort, teaches you nothing. Ease makes you slow, unfocused, emotionally fragile. But pain carves discipline into your bones. You stop chasing people who avoid responsibility. You stop explaining your worth to emotional beggars. You stop giving energy to relationships built on imbalance. You become selective, not because you're arrogant, but because you understand the cost of giving the wrong person access. Trauma didn't make you picky. It made you accurate. Your mind now filters people the way a fortress filters threats. You don't judge. You evaluate. You don't rush. You observe. You don't react. You choose. This level of emotional discipline wasn't born from motivation. It was born from necessity. Pain forced you to evolve. Silence taught you to listen. Loss taught you to prioritize. And betrayal taught you to trust your instincts more than anyone's words. 3. Awakening turns your weakest moments into leverage. Here's the paradox that people will never understand about you. The very things they thought would destroy you are the things that made you untouchable. When someone tries to use guilt against you, you recognize the move instantly, because you've seen it before. When someone tries to love bomb you, you read it like a script, because you've lived through its collapse. When someone tries to weaponize silence, you don't panic, you analyze. This is your tactical advantage. Your past doesn't haunt you anymore. It instructs you. Your suffering doesn't overwhelm you. It warns you. Your wounds don't weaken you. They speak to you. Trauma gave you a language that only the self-aware can read. The language of patterns, the language of motive, the language of human nature unmasked. And the moment you learned that language, you stopped being deceived. That's the reversal. The moment everything turns. Chas. 4. Awakening gives you the most dangerous thing of all, detachment. People misunderstand detachment. They think it's coldness, apathy, bitterness. But here's the truth. Detachment isn't the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. It means you can feel deeply without letting your feelings blind you. It means you can care without becoming controlled. It means you can walk away, not because you stopped loving, but because you started respecting yourself. Detachment is what people fear most in you, because they can't manipulate someone who doesn't depend on them emotionally. When you detach, you become ungovernable. Your reactions become unpredictable. Your silence becomes intimidating. Your presence becomes valuable. Your absence becomes devastating. People who once underestimated you now tread lightly, because you no longer need anyone to validate your worth, explain themselves, or convince you to stay. You know your value, you know your boundaries, and you know exactly when someone doesn't belong. Detachment isn't a loss of heart, it's a gain of power. 5. Awakening ends with a cold realization. You're not the same person anymore. You don't love the way you loved before. You don't trust the way you trusted before. You don't forgive the way you forgave before. That version of you is gone. Not killed, transformed. Your innocence didn't die. It evolved. Your softness didn't disappear. It learned strategy. Your empathy didn't vanish. It learned selection. You didn't become heartless. You became self-protective. You didn't lose your light. You learned how to guard it. That's the final awakening. The understanding that the strongest, coldest, most unshakable version of you was built from the ruins of who you used to be, and now you move through the world with a presence that unsettles the untrue and empowers the authentic. You see people clearly. You see yourself clearly. You see intentions clearly. You have become the one thing your past never wanted you to become. Someone who cannot be controlled. Because control isn't taken by force. It's taken by silence. It's taken by insight. It's taken by the person who knows themselves so deeply that nobody can weaponize their emotions again. And that's where your story ends. Not in revenge, not in bitterness, but in evolution. Pain didn't break you. It refined you. It reconstructed you. It armed you. And now, you don't just survive the darkness. You navigate it. You lead through it. You command it. Because trauma doesn't define you. It designed you, and that's the cruel beauty of power. It doesn't shout. It watches, and it always remembers.